What's up, guys, and welcome to the Rebalance podcast, where we dive into topics that matter most when it comes to overcoming struggles, injuries, and finding balance in your life. Everybody's idea of balance is that bit different, so my goal is to give you different perspectives, practical tips, as well as expert insights into what it means to live a balanced life. My name is Robbie Cassidy. I'm a physiotherapist and a health coach, and I've been helping people reignite their love for challenge, overcome their fear, and find more balance in their life through the process of self-development. So, let's get into it. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. On this episode of the podcast, we are going to look at 10 lessons that I've learned from coaching people with long-term issues and chronic injuries. And I guess the reason I want to jump into this episode specifically is because there's definitely patterns that you notice cropping up. And I think if I'm able to really dive into these and talk through them, you may notice these in yourself with some of the issues that you're dealing with, and you may be able to then get a better idea of how to fix it yourself and how you can work on it. And I think that's so important. I'm always trying to push self-control and really focus on people taking, control of their life and control of the injuries and the issues that they have, working on them day by day and making that 1% improvement. And the idea of self-management is so important when it comes to long-term injuries and when it comes to chronic pain, because you cannot rely on other people always to fix you. You do have to come back to the idea that you need to fix yourself. And I think that's such an important part of it. And I think that sometimes when you do go to these other people and they spin you a story and they tell you about how they're going to fix you and how they're going to put you back in place and they're going to do this and that and the other, that actually causes these issues to stick around a lot longer. So that's why in this episode, I'm going to hopefully be able to give you a couple of ideas and lessons that I've learned, as I said, from working with these people or working with people who have long-term issues and chronic pain. And hopefully then you can take these and apply them to your own life. Even if you don't have an issue, a long-term issue, even if you're just playing sport and you're picking up injuries here and there, a lot of these same principles will apply. So to jump into it, number one, this is going to sound very controversial or sound a bit funny, but you need to actually want to improve. And this is something it's so common that when people come on board or when I chat to them about their injuries, a lot of the time they don't actually want to improve. And a lot of the time when I'm out and people if I tell someone I'm a physio, they'll straight away start telling me about all their injuries. And you can see it's that they're not looking for like what to do. They're just, it's like a nice way of conversing with people, and it's nice to talk about it. And it's some people just prefer to talk about them than they prefer to talk about their issues. So you really, if you want to look at improving one of these, you want to, and I should say, I'm not telling anyone to not talk about their issues. There's no question, like, you do need to do that. But if you're talking to a coach, if you're talking to somebody about fixing a long-term or a chronic issue, you actually have to have it in your head that you want to improve, okay? And I know it does sound a bit weird, but there's a lot of people who are not too interested in actually putting in the work to improve. And it's really important, I guess, in certain situations, as I say, people want to feel that they're understood. That's a huge part of it, and that's a huge part of physio as well, is they want to feel that they're understood. And I genuinely 100% agree with that. I think it's something that it's difficult when it's been going on so long. If you've been dealing with an issue that's been going on for months or years or long time, it feels like there's no other way. So what happens then is you just get into the habit of talking about it, but you don't actually get into the habit of making change to improve it. And this is a huge one. If you are listening to this now, as I say, it's not like an attack or anything like that on anybody, but when you go to somebody to fix an issue, you kind of have to have the mindset that you want to improve, okay? And you're not just handing it off to that person so they can improve you. It's you need to improve yourself, and they'll facilitate that, and they will try to help you along the way. So, as I said, I do understand it's difficult when it happens and it's been going on a long time, and there's always another way. That's the best thing about it. You could have tried 10 or 15 or 20 different things, and nothing may have worked, but there's always another way. But you just need to be open to change every single time. Okay, and as I go through these, you'll see why that idea or why that belief and that mindset can creep in, because when it is going on so long, it just feels like there is no other way. The next one then is it's about trial and error. It's about trying out different things, seeing how they work. If they don't work for you, you get rid of them. If they do work, you add it to your arsenal. Okay, so it's always about trial and error. Very difficult to get these things right first time because there's so many things involved in it that people can actually get, I guess, you get disheartened when you try something and it doesn't work, and then you try something else and it doesn't work. And as I said, as I go through it, I'll tell you why that happens. But in a general sense, you need to test your limits. So just because you do something and it starts to flare up again and it starts to give you pain again, that doesn't mean that you're after re-injuring it in a lot of cases. What it actually means in the majority of cases is that you are finding your limits. You're finding what the body can handle before it starts to kick back and tell you, okay, I've gone too far. And as I said, some things work for some people, depending on so many different factors. And I would honestly say that timing is a huge factor. The time that you meet somebody, the time that you start your rehab, the time that you actually make a decision to improve, the time that you start working on it, like that is a huge one. Because if you look at timing in and of itself, and you look at even just the time of the year, whether it's the middle of the winter or the middle of the summer, maybe in the middle of the winter you have a bit more time. Maybe in the middle of the summer you're doing a lot of different things. That's obviously going to have a massive effect on the outcome. It's going to have an effect on the limits of the body, when it's going to kick back, when it's going to give you pain and tightness. And that's just one thing. Now, and that's a tiny thing. So think about all the rest of the factors in terms of your family circumstance, your job, if you're in the middle of the season, if there's a competition coming up. All these other factors come into play as well. So timing is massive with this. So if it doesn't work for you at one time, just as I said, you need to test your limits, you need to try again, and you need to try other things, okay? Understand you're going to have setbacks and flare-ups as you go through this and as you start to work on it, because setbacks and flare-ups it's the body's response to upping the activity. And if you do focus on it and expect that you're going to get these, when they happen, it's not that much of a problem then, because you get these setbacks, you get these flare-ups, you work through them, you calm them down, and you go again. So that's huge. The other one is this idea, and you've heard me talking about it a lot or more on podcasts recently, is this idea of Kaizen, where you're making that 1% improvement every day. If you can continue to make a 1% improvement so that today is better than yesterday and yesterday or tomorrow will be better than today, your mindset changes around looking for this really get rich quick, but this idea of quick fixes. Because if you do focus on quick fixes with a long-term injury and a chronic issue, all you're going to be doing is building on this cycle, and it's going to really reinforce the idea that it can't be fixed. And as I said, you need to find out what works for you specifically. Just because something worked for your uncle or your cousin doesn't mean that that's going to work for you, okay? And it's good, as I said, different things for different people, no question. But just because somebody else said it worked or somebody else said it didn't work doesn't mean that you have to go off that. Now, the next lesson, I guess, that I've really picked up on is when you're dealing with a long-term issue, something that's going on for a long time, obviously for, let's say, years, having someone to keep you accountable can be a massive help, because what it does is it keeps you on track. It just keeps you working in the same way, in the same direction, and not wavering too much, not going off and not trying out different things and too many things. That is the goal. Like, it's consistency in the small things that make the biggest difference. And it's good to have someone as well to bounce ideas off of. So whether that be a physio or it could be your doctor, whatever it is, maybe just a friend, as long as you have somebody that keeps you on the right path, somebody that you trust is there for you, it will keep you consistent. And this is more important, I guess, for even the people who struggle to be consistent, who are able to do things when, I guess, everything's going well and they're able to stick to something for a couple of weeks and then they fall off. The idea of having someone to keep you accountable will just keep you on track when you hit those struggling points, when you hit those points, those blocking points, those barriers. And with that person, as I said, make sure they know what they're talking about, because often I've had people come to me and they've been with someone before and the person has just, I don't know, they just read a bit online about different things and then decided to go at it, and they just spin all these wrong ideas, and people are obviously getting stuck in a rut then and then they can't get out of it. But that's a different story. they need to know what they're talking about, and they need to be able to discuss why things are happening as well as what you can do to fix it. Okay, and sometimes there's no quick fix at the time. This is a really interesting one. Like this is actually a separate lesson. There's no fix for something at a time. You just have to work through it, continue on the path that you're going, and it will calm itself. There's nothing that you can do right this second that's going to get rid of that. And I think there's this idea of natural history as well, that sometimes things flare up and they take time to calm down again. And if you're able to beat that natural history, you're doing excellent. Like you're way, way above. But as I said, sometimes things just need to pass their course because there's other factors in the background that are contributing to that at the time. Now, another one is you need to set goals for where you want to get to, and you need to measure them. Okay, because this is one that I always run into. If you're not setting goals on what you want to get to, and actually realistic goals, setting the goal to have no pain for the rest of your life, in a general sense, is pretty crazy, because if you stub your toe, then you have pain. You know, like if you bang your head, you're going to have pain. So saying that you're not going to have any, let's say, hip pain or knee pain for the rest of your life because you do a certain amount of exercises every day it's unrealistic. So you need to set goals of what you want to get to when you're dealing with these issues. I want to be able to train 3 times per week and play a game at the weekend and have no pain. A lot more realistic. I want to be able to run 10K with no pain. Very realistic. Okay, and when you start changing your mindset around this, it gets rid of the idea of, okay, right, I just don't want to have any pain anymore for the rest of my life, and you stop looking for these fixes, and then it keeps you on the path of, okay, right, well, can I run 6K this week? In a month's time, I can run 8K. In a month's time, you can run 10K. So now you've hit that goal, and you don't have any pain. And that's a very measurable improvement. You can look back, reflect on it, and say, okay, look at that. I've actually made an improvement. Well, if you say, I don't want to have pain ever again, you stick to the program. It gets you to a state that you're well able to do most things. Then you do something that's a small bit outside your reach. It kicks up again. You feel like all the work you've done is gone to scrap. Okay, so setting the goal to have no pain for the rest of your life, I'm sorry to say it, it's not a realistic goal. The other thing is that people actually who are born with the genetic predisposition to not have any pain don't live very long, which is unfortunate. So there is actually an issue that you can be born with, that you don't feel pain at all, and as I said, they don't live very long at all because of that, obviously. And they just so they sit on areas and they don't feel it. They stub things. There's a lot of factors that go into that. So anyway, to go back on track, having measurable goals keeps you on track. Okay, so having the idea that you don't want to have pain for the rest of your life is more of a problem, because it just feeds into this negative pattern of, okay, right, I get pain, I'm back to square one, everything's gone, I'm going to try something new. Goals are a great way to keep you disciplined as well, and as I said, you can measure that improvement, and if you can measure it, it's so much easier to manage it, so much easier to build on it week in, week out. And that's what we're trying to do. It's small changes, tiny changes. You're going to hear me repeating that all of the time, but it is tiny changes made over long period that make the biggest difference. The next one, and I'm going to be blunt about this, is you are wasting your time if you're dealing with a chronic issue and you're not thinking holistically about the issue. And I'm sorry to say it, but there is so many healthcare professionals that are still focused on the biomechanical side of things, especially for these chronic issues. Like, the funny thing is, you can go on Google right now, type in back pain fixes, and you're going to get, on the first page, you're going to get all wrong answers. And if you do the same thing on YouTube, you're going to get videos that give you all wrong answers that are focused specifically, I shouldn't say wrong answers, but videos that are focused specifically on this biomechanical issue. And they will all tell you different things about how the way your hips are and the way your posture is and how your feet are. And they're going to say that you've muscle imbalances, and there's all these other factors that have no relation to it. And the thing is that when you're dealing with a chronic issue, if you do have these beliefs that it's a biomechanical issue, you are going to go around in circles. Okay, so it's really, really important. In some cases, it's focusing on the biomechanical issue is the reason that people actually get into this chronic state, because they focus on that too much. They try to fix it. They think they fixed it. It comes back again. They blame the same thing, or they look for something else mechanical. And that's the thing. So too much focus on the wrong things actually feeds into these patterns. And as I said, trying to change something that has nothing to do with the issue, like postures unrelated to pain. In a lot of cases, sustained postures where you sit in the same position, you start to get uncomfortable. Okay, that can be related to it, no question. Or if you look at even I always say to people, even the posture that you're supposed to sit up straight is the funniest one, because if you sit up straight for 30 seconds or a minute of that in that position, it's very uncomfortable, but yet it's supposed to be the perfect posture. So it's not true. MRIs are the other one, where you look at something in an MRI and you say, okay, well, this is the problem. In some cases, it's unbelievable, the effectiveness of MRIs. In chronic cases, it's generally not effective at all, and if anything, it's actually worse for them, because you get this feedback mechanism of just negative ideas and all this, and you're looking at bulging discs and you're looking at degenerative disc disease. It'd be literally like looking at somebody with grey hair and telling them that's the problem. So it's not. MRIs in a lot of cases are excellent for certain conditions, but when it comes to these chronic long-term issues, I'm fighting an uphill battle when I meet people who have MRIs and they can show me all their MRIs, and even though I can show them the research how that MRI is bollocks, for lack of a better term, it's very hard to fight that. So you're going to get really far, and then a setback is going to leave you trusting nobody, and you're going to feel like you have no other option because of that. So the other thing is, then when you keep going down this path, what will happen is you'll start looking for a surgical option, even when it's not needed. And that's another big problem, because what you're looking at there is you're in pain all the time. It's like, I need a quick fix now. And what it'll do is it'll only solidify that issue of things being biomechanical. This is a kind of an interesting quote, or funny quote, but in the nicest way, all right? If you go to consultant because you have chronic pain, and that consultant is an orthopedic surgeon in a lot of cases, and I am not knocking orthopedic surgeons at all, they do God's work in a lot of cases. But if you're going because you're getting back pain over and over and over again, it's like going to a Ford dealer expecting to buy a Volkswagen, okay? But you only have one option when you go there, because the consultant's option is surgery. So it doesn't matter if you're looking for a Volkswagen, you're looking for other options, you're getting the Ford. Okay, and that's it. It's simple as. So this is the thing. If you keep going back on over and over and over again, and if your consultant is very focused on the biomechanical side of things, you're getting that Ford. Okay, so you're getting the surgery. Whether it's going to fix it or not, you'll do it, and it'll be worth a try. And I think I really don't like the idea of getting surgeries when they're not needed, because you're making a pretty significant change to the body when you get them. With the long-term and chronic injuries, it's more about the nervous system's confidence in the body itself, as opposed to the structures. So your emotions, your thought patterns, and your language all play a role. And that's why it's important to look at it holistically. What also plays a role massively is your community, the social side of things, your beliefs, and I'll talk about those in a minute, but the people around you make such a difference to it as well. And it's interesting because over the last couple of months, I've been trying to build this program, and I'm trying to incorporate this. It's an interesting one to try get it down on paper and to try figure out how you can approach this holistically and how you can get people to think about it themselves. As I said, I'm all about self-control and self-management. So in the program, it's going to be focused towards self-management and how you can do it yourself and what you can work on. And that's really the goal of it, because I think there's certain things obviously you need to reach out for help for, no question at all. But when you get a better understanding of what's going on with these chronic issues, then you can work on them. And the power that it gives you is crazy when you feel that you can do it. It's interesting, like when I look at when clients jump on board and depending on their injuries, especially if it's these chronic ones, you can nearly tell a year in advance when they're going to have a flare-up. You can say like maybe around about the end of January, start of February. You're going to say when you go back in September, championship, and when there's like a big football match on, or a big race that you're involved in, or a big competition that you're involved in. There's certain times that they are more predisposed to having those flare-ups because of the stress and everything else that's going on around them at the time. And there's a great quote from Roy Keane, and I always mention it, where he talks about the week before they play Arsenal in the Premier League. Obviously he's a United player for anyone who doesn't know. Irish guy as well. Yep. But the week before they play Arsenal, he was saying that he felt every injury that he ever had. So he'd feel it in his knee and he'd feel it in his hip and he'd feel like everything that he had. He said he had torn his ACL, so he felt it there a lot. His whole body would start to get tight and sore. And how he described it was that his body was preparing for war. But what was actually happening is the stress of the game at the weekend was causing his body to really flare up and starting to kick back. That's it when you look at it now and looking back at it. And he obviously had that rivalry with, I don't want to, for the soccer fans or the football fans, I don't want to ruin it, but I think it was Vieira he had a problem with. Maybe I'm wrong. But so he had that competition with him all the time. Obviously, there was going to be a big battle at the weekend. And then as a result, his body was, the stress of everything going on around him was causing everything to kick up. So always look holistically. That's the aim of the game. The next one then, and there's only a few more, life gets in the way. Okay, this is a huge one. It's okay to waver. It's okay to go off course a small bit, but you need to stick to the basics. You're going to have times where you feel like you're making no progress at all, as with anything. In any sport, any competition, anything you're trying to learn a new skill, whatever it be. If you're trying to learn a new language, if you're trying out a new sport, you're going to have times that you feel like you're making no progress. And they can become sticking points for people. But the interesting thing is that if you be consistent, if you stay consistent with the basics at those times, try different things here and there, but with the basics, you're in line with those. Even if you are doing nothing else, you will continue to make progress. And a lot of the time, right after that fact is when you'll see massive progress. So the week after and the 2 weeks after. And I think that's kind of like a rule with anything, really, isn't it? When times are toughest, that's when you continue to go, that's when you make your biggest leaps. So the basics are, and not just these three, but in a general sense, remember the stress and adaptation system. As you stress the body, you give it time to recover, it adapts. Sleep, diet, hydration, and activity and movement. And then load management. If you keep those things in your head when things start to get busy or things start to get really pick up around you, and you keep those in line in a general sense, you will be able to continue to make progress all of the time. What's up, guys? Robbie here. I hope you are enjoying the podcast so far. I want to take a moment just to personally ask you for your help. If you're enjoying the podcast, would you be willing to share it with someone you think would love it too? Maybe a friend, family member on social media, or even if you just brought it up in conversation with someone you know. The recommendation means the world to us, and it's because of people like you that we get to be able to produce this podcast on a weekly basis. So thank you so much for your support so far, and I would love if you could help us reach even more people who could benefit from it too. Really appreciate you, and we're going to jump straight back to the podcast. This is one that I talked about earlier, but I want to come back to it again. The biggest barrier to success that I've noticed is beliefs and limiting beliefs. It's when somebody comes to you with a very limiting belief about whether it could be the biomechanical side of their body, whatever it is, that is your biggest barrier, and you will be fighting that battle for a long time until you can change that belief. So I guess for the people listening, what you've been told in the past are going to be your biggest obstacles in a lot of cases. What your parents have told you, what your family members, what your friends, and even at a higher level, what doctors, physios, and consultants have told you in the past. They are all going to be the biggest barriers and the biggest obstacles that you need to overcome. And until those beliefs are broken, you're going to be going around in circles. As a quick example, I remember I was working with a client once, and they believed at the time that flat feet were the cause of the neck pain that they were feeling. Okay, because somebody told them before, they saw a video or whatever it was. I think it was a consultant that told them, or a podiatrist that told them, or I don't know exactly what it was, who it was that said it to them, and I'm sure it was reinforced by multiple people at different times, that, well, if your feet are flat, that's going to cause your knee to cave in, that's going to look at your hips, that means your back is going to be a problem, and all the way up to the neck. And that was so ingrained. Okay, so that this was a really interesting one for me as a learning point. I went at the start, I was addressing it for ages, like we were different case studies, different ideas, looking at everything. And then as we were going through it, I remember a couple of months into whatever, I was actually like, okay, we've made massive progress here on a lot of things, because we were like, let's start looking holistically. Let's look at the times that these things flare up and look at what's going on around you. Okay. And it was a good few months after the fact that we had started together. And at this specific time, this person was in the middle of a job change. So they were changing jobs. A close family member was significantly ill. very, very, very ill, let's say in a very close family member. They had to take over work at the house while everything else went on. As a result, their sleep dropped to 5 hours a night. They weren't able to exercise or move. And I remember getting on the call and talking through it and saying, okay, right, we understand everything. And it clicked. No, this is the problem of the flat foot again. And I was like, whoa, that's like, we can clearly pick out all these things are going on. But it was a belief that was so ingrained that the foot was the problem with the neck. And it was a really, really interesting time for me, because I was like, wow, that's such a strong belief. And that belief, the thing is, like, you have to look at when all these things are going on around you. So I cannot blame anyone for this. With all these things going on around you, you revert back to the comfort. And I know this myself because I've done it myself. When things are going wrong around you, you have to revert back to what's comfortable for yourself and what you believe in. And the beliefs that you have grown up with are generally the most comfortable things in a lot of cases, as opposed to these new beliefs. And in this case, even though there was all these other factors going on, a comfortable belief was that the foot being flat was the main issue and the main problem. And it was an eye-opener one for me, because I was like, God, I obviously felt sorry for the person because of everything that was going on at the time, but I was like, that's going to be that's like the, how would you say, like, that's the factory setting right now that we're fighting against, that we're trying to break. So the power of beliefs and the power of your beliefs have a huge effect in your life, and have a huge effect on what you feel you can achieve and what you feel you can do. And it's something now, since I moved to Argentina, where I am at the moment, and let's say my mates that are, like, I've made mates out here, let's say, and a friend of mine has come out from home, or from, let's say, that I knew, another place, and one of the conversations that we consistently have nearly every single day is, what are the limiting beliefs that are stopping you from getting to where you want to be right now? Or what's a limiting belief that you picked up on this week? And it's just non-stop all the time, because it's something that we're trying to dig into and trying to figure out what it is. And if somebody says something, it's like, that was a limiting belief. I know that was. So it's good and it's very effective, but you'd be surprised with the stories that you tell yourself, because that's the most important thing. If you tell yourself, whatever stories you tell yourself, you're going to believe, and then you will live a life based off of those stories. Now, to go on to the last couple, I've 3 of them left. Sometimes the obstacle is the way. So leaning into discomfort and leaning into, like, learning, I suppose leaning into discomfort and learning is often when people make the biggest jumps, as I mentioned earlier on. So usually when you hit these obstacles, it's a week or 2 later that you see the big changes. And it's the week or 2 after, when you focus on the obstacle and focus on overcoming that obstacle specifically, that your mood, your attitude, and your belief changes. And with that, it's surprising. You'll see confidence will start to grow. People will feel like they are able to take on the world. Genuinely, they feel like there's nothing that can stop them once they lean into the obstacle and they try to overcome that obstacle. So that's a huge one, I think. Sometimes the obstacle is the way. What I was talking about before is I was talking about when life gets in the way, it's okay to waver, but stick to the basics. In this one, it's the obstacle is the way in a lot of cases. And that is, for anyone that wants to know where I got that, is a Ryan Holiday book, The Obstacle is the Way. It's very interesting to read. A lot of different short stories on people who use the obstacle to be the way. And yeah, it's a great way. It's a great way of approaching these things as well, because then when things flare up, it's not a problem. It's a challenge. And it's that change of mindset and change of belief that makes the biggest difference. So understanding then which is the right bridge to cross is the most important thing. What discomfort you want to lean into, what's an actual issue you need to worry about, as well as watch, like, the body starting to flare up again. Moving on to the last 2, it's constantly about learning and understanding what's contributing. This comes back to that holistic approach again. It's a journey, not a destination. As I said, we're not trying to get rid of pain for the rest of your life. We're just trying to get you to a stage where you can do what you want to do without any issue. So pain can give you great insight into your mental and physical health. So it really does actually give you insight into your ability to cope as well in certain situations, because everyone copes differently with different things. Some people that get pain, they lean into it, they do more. Some people that get pain, they revert back and they do less. And both of those can be a problem, and both of those can be a solution. So that's the funny thing. If you lean into it too much, you're going to cause yourself more problems. If you rest too much, you're going to cause yourself more problems. So it's finding the balance. But it does get better. Or I should say, it gets the better of us sometimes when we do that, because when things are weighing down on us and there's a lot of things going on around us, it just feels like you're fighting an uphill battle and that you can't go anywhere. And as everyone is that bit different, focus on leaning on the principles and focus on applying them to yourself. If you can focus on the principles, which are all the basics, as well as what I talked about earlier on, your stress and adaptation, your load management, all of that as well. If you can focus on those and learn how to apply them to yourself, because as I said, everyone's that bit different, that's when you can make the long change, the big long-term change. The very last one, and probably one of the most important, is hindsight is 2020. So oftentimes it's only after the flare-up has calmed down and things have really kind of gone away and we're back in the routine that we're able to pick up on what actually caused it in the first place. And that's why we need to stop focusing on everything that we have, that's gone on in the past. We need to focus on that 1% continuous improvement, educating ourselves. And then you focus on reflection. Then you look back and then you work on, okay, right, this contributed to this and this caused this and this led on to this. And then you can start to make change. But as I said, hindsight is 2020. So it's easy to look back at something and say what you could have done differently instead of just completely disregarding that. Look back, see what you could have done differently. Don't beat yourself up over it. Reflect on it, make the change, and make it less likely that happens in the future again. That is everything that I wanted to talk about today. I hope that you were able to take from that, and I hope that if you're dealing with a long-term issue or a chronic injury, and I think a lot of those lessons as well, genuinely, I think they apply to life as much as they apply to rehabbing injuries and dealing with the injuries and dealing with issues. And I think if you can at least take a couple of these and start to apply them in your own life, or even if you start to apply them with the issues that you're dealing with or the injuries that you're dealing with, you should be able to start to make improvements on it. Now, if anyone does have any questions on anything or is dealing with an issue, get in contact with me. At the moment, I'm still pretty full up with clients and that. But if you do ever have any questions, you can always just write to me on Instagram. Or you can send me an email at mobilitytutor@gmail.com with any issues or any questions or anything that you have, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, keep an eye out I have a very interesting podcast, as I said, coming up very soon with a UFC fighter, ex-UFC, so keep an eye out for that. And I also have a back program, so if you're listening to this in a few months, it's going to be out. Check it out. Link is in the description. If not, keep an eye out for that, because as I said, it's going to try to apply all these principles to a program, which is going to be very interesting. I've been working on it for a long time, and I'm looking forward to getting it out there. So I hope you're as excited as I am about it. It's for back pain specifically, but I think I'm probably going to take it and try to apply it for understanding pain and understanding the body more in time. But for now, guys and girls, thank you all for listening, and I will chat to you all again soon. Okay guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking to learn more about what we do, as well as check out any of the mobility and rehab programs we have available, just head over to the description of this podcast and you will find a link to all the programs there. As always, thank you for listening, and I will chat to you all again in the next episode. Have a good one.